I am going to ask Professor Sean Tweedy to unmute yourself and to turn your camera on. So our first presenter of our second round is Professor Sean Tweedy. Sean is the Principal Investigator for the International Paralympic Committee's Classification Research and Development Centre. Sean will be reflecting on his decade-long career in developing best practice and evidence-based methods for allocating athletes to classes. Sean leads the Parasport and Adapted Physical Activity Research Group in the School of Human Movement and National Sciences, gosh, that was a mouthful, at the University of Queensland, and is a proud member of the Queensland's Parasport Network for Performance Enhancement and Applied Research Board. I'd also like to note that Sean is the dad of one of my favourite teammates, Connor Tweedy. Just want to pop that in there. I have lots of fun with Connor at rugby training. So over to you, Sean.
Okay. Let me know. Can you see my full screen now, Ella?
Yes, it is a purple screen with inclusion and Paralympic classification on there.
Beautiful. That's good to know. Yes, I'm a person with very grey hair. I'm a male. I've got big, thick rim black glasses on. I've got a blue striped shirt on that's brand new. I hope people like that. And I'm wearing a coat, a green coat. The title of my presentation is Inclusion and Paralympic Classification, a Paradox. Now I had a question mark on the end of that for a little that statement, that title for a little while, but I've turned it into a statement, and I hope you'll be able to see that there is a paradox here as we move through. I'm hoping that'll progress me. I'd like to begin with acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which I'm speaking from. Pay my respects to the traditional owners, their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connection to country, and I recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Also like to acknowledge my team from UQ. It's too big to run through, but we have a great group, and really a lot of just about everything that I do is derived in some way from at least one of this group, if not more. Very good strong interactions. My topic is actually really quite dry, so what I thought I'd do, Kelly did such a wonderful job bringing together Paralympians and getting them involved in this great program that's been pulled together, that I thought I would put up to spice things up. There's a photograph of all the Paralympians that I could find on each of my slides. I won't be talking about them in depth, but it just you'll be able to spot people that you know, I'm sure. And I'm starting out with Michael Dobby Bridges. Michael, I just need a quick explainer here. I really want to make sure that you're not offended by the slide that you appear on. The fact that you're on this slide doesn't have anything to do with the content, in which I define what a paradox is. And a paradox is an apparently absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition, or a strongly counterintuitive one, which investigation, analysis or explanation may nevertheless prove to be well-founded or true. So Michael's not a paradox in wheelchair tennis. A better example is the pithy little aphorism, less is more. So that sounds like a contradiction, but at least in writing terms, when we'll be writing an academic paper, if you put in less complexity, less information, and reduce the number of words, that's less, then you can get more understanding on the part of the reader. So you can simplify in order to get more. So less is more is a saying that you'll recognise. It's paradoxical. and that's an example of a paradox. So to set up what the paradox is, we begin with the International Paralympic Committee's vision. So the vision and mission of the Paralympic Committee, the International Paralympic Committee, from the 2022 Constitution. You'll see there 3.1, vision of the IPC is to make for an inclusive world through parasport. And so this is the headline task of what the vision of the IPC is, to make for an inclusive world through parasport. And classification is the central pillar of the movement. I'm quoting the president there, Andrew Parsons. I sit on the Classification, Compliance and Oversight Committee for the International Paralympic Committee, and that's what we're told. This is central to what we're all about, and it's in the classification code. We've just brought out the 3rd edition in 2024. It says that it lays out the governing rules there, that all IPC members, in order to be a member of the IPC for a sports organisation or a recognised international federation, they're bound by and must comply with the classification code and the international standards, subject to the following. The main point here is that classification is not an option for Paralympic sports. If you're going to have a sport on the Paralympic program, you need to have a code compliant classification system. So it's not optional. And this is just a few sections on. We're in 5.1 now of the classification code, in which we describe the fundamentals of the classification process. There are 4 stages. You can see, actually I'll just try this laser pointer. You can see here stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. And UHC stands for underlying health condition. And then in stage 1, we make sure that people have got a health condition that could lead to an eligible impairment type. And people who are excluded are people, for instance, who have got low back pain. So if you've just got low back pain, you don't get kicked out if you've got low back pain. But if it's the only disability that you got, and low back pain is the biggest cause of disability in the world, then you're excluded from parasport. The next there's an evaluation of whether you've got an eligible impairment. So somebody might actually have a spinal cord injury, but maybe only the sensory pathways have been impaired. There's no motor impairment. And if that's the case, if you don't have any motor impairment from a spinal cord injury, sensory only, then that person would be excluded. And then you move down to the minimum impairment criteria. If you've got a below elbow amputation, you're eligible for a lot of different sports, but in World Para-Athletics, if you've got a below elbow amputation, then you're excluded from sports, from track events over 400 metres, long distance running. So you'd have to ask the question, if classification is, the vision of the movement is to make for a more inclusive world through parasport, and classification is absolutely critical to parasport, how are we making an inclusive world through parasport if all these people are being excluded? So there is you could say then, maybe could we just make parasport more inclusive by removing classification? That's a very reasonable proposition. Just let everybody in. Don't worry about whether they've got a disability, whether they're eligible or not. We don't take away the eligibility criteria. We just make everybody included. And interestingly, there's been a very long-running experiment that's actually investigated what happens under those circumstances. And what we end up with is the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games don't have any of those criteria. They don't have requirements. They don't aim to minimise the impact of impairment on the outcome of competition. So that's the scenario without classification. You need some rules to say who's actually eligible for your sport, and how you're going to how it's going to be administered. This is now where I start to explain this paradox that I've set up. This article that I've got up here on the screen, you'll see Ella appearing for the first time. She's the only one who gets a repeat because she's in two sports. This is Article 19 from the Convention on the Rights of Persons with a Disability. And the article is to do with living independently and being included in the community. So that's everything that's going on in the community. And the two words that I'd like you to, so the focus of the article is inclusion in the community, and the opening statements states that are parties to so it's talking about states or nation states that are parties to the present convention recognise the equal rights of all persons with disabilities to live in community with choices equal to others. So choice is really important in terms of inclusion. If you don't have choice, you're funneled into just one way of doing things, then that's not choice, particularly if everybody else in the community has a choice. So this rather busy slide comes from a paper from 2021 by a group in Canada, and actually a combination, Queen's University and in Norway. So, I'm not so interested in the topic, but it's from able-bodied sport. The conceptualisation that's really important here that I think is brought out is the importance of the fundamental difference between recreational versus competitive sport. And this is about how we attract and retain people into sport. There are certainly lessons that we can learn, and the thesis of the people who wrote this article is that you need a combination of recreational and competitive sport. That's the total package with sport. You get both dimensions, and that they're offered across the lifespan, and that people, what all these arrows are showing is that people might start out in competitive youth sport, but they should have an avenue back to recreational sport, after which they might move down into competitive sport again and then back into recreational sport as they go into adulthood, and then finish in recreational sport. So that's the strongest sort of system. So everybody in society has that choice, and it's very important that people with disabilities have that choice. If we only offer recreational or participatory opportunities of sport for people with disabilities, then they don't have choice, and that's not an inclusive society. So what classification does, this is you get back to the purpose of classification, and 1.1 really captures this really well. The purpose of classification is to enable athletes with eligible impairments to participate in competitive sport. So that's a slight mix up there, but it's competitive sport which is the focus, with a pathway to sporting excellence, the pinnacle of which is the Paralympic Games. So that's the pathway to excellence, that's competitive sport, that's where we're recognising outstanding performance. And that's what classification in parasport offers. And my declared bias in the work that I do is in relation to people with high support needs. It's a real research focus of myself and our team, and to illustrate the importance of classification, particularly for people with high support needs. I used the profile of Jamie Booth, one of the swimmers in our squad. She's 21 years old. She's got cerebral palsy, GMFCS4, so that's very severe cerebral palsy. Very, very high muscle tone. She's profoundly deaf. She had previously undiagnosed gastroesophageal reflux disorder, and when she tried really hard in the pool, it was aggravated. She got shoulder impingement from a new wheelchair, not from the swimming program, but from a new wheelchair, and there was all the rehabilitation that went, the identification rehabilitation that went along with that. It's all really quite complex for an athlete with high support needs entering a competitive sport. The time that I want to draw your attention to here is 1 minute 26.4. That's Jamie's best time, and it's in 2019 that was the 5th fastest time in the world for her class. But if you just take that time, 1 minute 26, in absolute terms, there are most primary school children in the upper years of primary school who swim competitively are going to be swimming 2 or 3 times as fast as 1:26. So it's not a very good time in absolute terms. This is I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this, whether I can click this. Might end up just being a photograph. Yep, looks like it is. Yes, it is. So without classification, we don't have any way of finding out whether Jamie's in absolute terms, what in absolute terms is a very low standard performance. In the context of Jamie's very severe disability, it's an outstanding performance, and Jamie would never know that. She would not have that prestige. She would not have that recognition. She would be unidentifiable unless there was a classification system, and that's the really important part that it plays. And so to go back to our definition, an apparently absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition, or a strongly counterintuitive one which investigation, analysis or explanation may prove to be well-founded or true. The example that I'm putting to you here is that parasport classification does exclude some people, but it makes society more inclusive because we give people with disabilities, and particularly severe disabilities, a chance to excel. And I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. And thank you for the 2 photos of me. Like I said earlier, I didn't want to make this about myself, but here we are.